All right, this is going to be a look at a specific coverage that I think the Ravens are seeing. Actually, it's two coverages in one, and that's even a simple oversimplification. To be honest with you, when I refer in videos to split field coverages, there are many times where we as fans and even myself and many analysts we assume certain things in terms of the coverage. I found what I think could be a very educational and illustrative play to show what split coverages do, and then I'm going to reverse it and I'm going to try to describe to you how the play would be covered in a completely different manner if you had two different split field calls. So I'm going to use a play from the Ravens' final drive against the Bills. It's one that I think, again, really illustrates the point. So when I talk about split field coverages, or when anyone talks about it, what you're talking about is splitting the field in half. So for the defense, the Bills' defense in this case, you have the left and right side of the field. Now, it appears as if they are the same side. It's a flex formation, 2-by-2. But you have two independent calls here by the defense in terms of coverage. I will let this run 2 or 3 times to the point where Lamar begins to scramble, because it's not really the point of this video that I'm trying to make. Do I think that maybe we have the opportunity to throw the ball to Isaiah Likely underneath here? It's possible, but we don't know how Lamar is processing these reads. And to be honest with you, we don't know how the Bills have adapted or covered these route concepts later on in the game. What I can tell you is I know we have two read to the bottom of the field. Two read is something that the Bengals play occasionally. The Steelers play it a lot. And it is an answer, quote unquote, for number 2 out and number 1 vertical. Think of Joe Hayden's pick 6 against RG3 in the 2020 regular season game between the Ravens and the Steelers. And then later on in the game, think of Marquise Brown's touchdown on a vertical up the right sideline from Trace McSorley. Of course, Lamar didn't play that game. That was 2 read, both of those coverages. And what happened in that play was, as soon as 2 broke out, the corner jumped it. Now, a lot of people think like these are just coverages that are randomly called. That's not true. These are reads. And that's one of the things that we need to give players credit for. In this case, the safety and the corner are both reading too. There's a lot of people who think DBs stare in the backfield all the time. That's not true. They read routes. They will at some point look at the quarterback. But as soon as Mark Andrews makes his outcut, watch this DB number 24 settle his feet and stick with that out. Okay, now you might say, well, then we need to throw the vertical. This safety's reading the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing I did a moment ago. Slow this up. Watch the safety now. He's going to cover up that vertical. He's reading number 2. He's reading Andrews' release. This is not something that is called just because of Mark Andrews. This is something that is called on each side of the field. So that's 2 read on the bottom side of the field. They're reading number 2. If number 2 had gone under, like this, then the corner would have stayed locked on 1. As it was, as soon as he made his outcut, the corner allowed number 1 to pass to the safety. It's essentially a half-field responsibility by the safety once you read 2 out. The other option here would be 2 verticals. That would just turn into man. The safety would be man on 2, which is Andrews, and the corner would be man on 1, which is Duvernay. It is 2 read. They are reading the number 2 receiver. All right, up to the top side of the field. Let me get rid of these lines. Up to the top side of the field. Focus on this safety here as Isaiah Likely runs his drag. And we'll let it run 2 or 3 times. This is not 2 read. Okay? Well, it could be 2 read from the standpoint of their check this week for 2 read versus a detached tight end. A detached tight end means Isaiah Likely lined up as a stand-up in a 2-point stance. The Bills may have said, okay, when he runs a drag, we're not generally getting a post here. So that might be why he's sitting in the curl or the slant area. All right, so this is a different read. I offer to you that this could just be quarters. It could be any of the other calls that are split field coverage calls, palms, anything. There's different systems that have been out there and been in place for a long time. All, if you ask me, kind of centered upon or foundationally built upon some things that Nick Saban and Bill Belichick kind of put in place in the 90s when they were with the Browns. But those concepts were really advanced upon by a lot of other people. So you can see you've got a drag here. You got an out by Andrews that he sat down because he saw the corner squat. You got to go by Duvernay, and then again, what looks like a post here. Let's focus on this safety as we go back through these reads. I'm gonna try to slow this down, and I'm always questioning this video player because I'm manually moving this on a timeline. Watch that safety to the field. I think that's Poyer. As soon as Likely runs the drag, he is now he's looking at Lamar. If Lamar's looking backside here for the post, then he'll try to fit under it because he can see what Lamar's looking at. Because 2 is no threat to him now. The only threat that you could really have would be like someone start the drag and then lube it up the middle of the field. Then we run an out there, a vertical here. This safety goes to play the vertical, and this guy's got a tough cover. That's one of the reasons why, in my experience, you're not generally sitting that guy down on 2 under, because he could still theoretically threaten the middle of the field, if he jets upfield somewhere around right outside the hash. Hopefully you guys understand my point. That's one of the reasons why it's not sound when people do this, like on a drag by 2, why they, run the safety up high to essentially double any vertical by number 1. There's a lot of reasons that's not sound. Number 1 is you could have a post, you could have a dig that you're taking yourself out of position to cover. Simultaneous to that, you have the route that I've drawn up now for the 3rd time. So these are 2 independent calls. 2 read down the bottom side of the field. It essentially looks like cover 2, half field safety, a corner who's kind of sitting in the flats. You have a hook defender, Taron Johnson, incredibly versatile guy. Back here looks like you've got Robinson running, a post, and this guy trying to rob that. Why? Because he sees Lamar's eyes. If Lamar's eyes, as soon as 2 went under, so I'm referring to Likely. If soon as Likely went under, if Lamar's eyes had went to the other side of the field, then he may have rolled to center field. All right, but it looks like to me Lamar's actually looking over here at first and reading Taron Johnson. Lamar doesn't get fooled by 2 read. RG3 did. Trace McSorley didn't get fooled by it against the Steelers that year because he had seen it on film. He had seen the Steelers playing it in that particular situation. So when you're talking about quarterbacks reading things, reading the coverage, processing through the routes, it's more than just cover 2, cover 3. It's more than just quarters. And look, I'm going to set a link in the description to a really cool video by a guy who's done a ton of videos on YouTube over the years. Great coach too, and he's got a really good explanation of 2 read, quarters, a little bit of palms. I suspect the Ravens are trying to implement some of these things, and there are some times where one half of the field is in the right call and the other half of the field is in the wrong call. These things are normally called by the guys on one side of the field together. What I just drew up there would be like a cover 4. That is not what quarters is. Quarters, to me, is what this safety does here. 2 goes under, Likely. He sits and kind of robs right now, but he's leveraging still the top of the numbers. All right, and he's looking at Lamar, seeing where's Lamar looking. To me, it looks like Lamar's looking at Likely right now, and he's going to find work. But he's not going to take himself out of position to help with, a dig or a post by number 1 to his side. So split field coverages are designed to match the personnel and the athleticism of your receivers. They're also designed to slow the quarterback's progression and recognition of what you're doing, because each coverage call could look different than the one before it. So now let's rewind this. Let's say we get the exact same routes that we just showed you to the other side of the field. Remember, these guys are in 2 read. In my opinion, I would say these guys are in quarters, but there's a couple of other calls that would fit too with the way that this safety reacts. Just so you know, in both of those calls, one vertical, that call up top, one vertical, that's man by the corner. If you get a vertical by 2 or an in by 2, it's man here. Okay? But for a moment, let's say we got the same exact routes, but to the other side of the field. So we had this. I believe that's what we had. Let's draw it up to the other side. Duvernay runs the dig. Andrews runs the under. Likely runs the out. And you get that. Remember, on what we had a moment ago, when Duvernay ran the vertical and Andrews ran out, this guy squatted on Andrews. That would not happen if it was quarters here. This corner would get off all of one. All right? This safety would be off and then reading 2, and 2 would be covered by Milano on the inside shoulder, on the inside of that. All right? Down here, we've got 2 read. 2 read, and there's a lot of lines on the screen. I'm trying to leave the routes up here for you. So hopefully those routes being there is cool with you. I probably need to find a telestrator that's got different colors, so forgive me for that. So over here on the other side, safety, reading 2. If Andrews goes under, he's going to help out. He's going to help out with 1 because it's 2 read, okay? He's going to stay high and help out with a post, a dig, anything over on this side. 2 would probably be covered by Taron Johnson, depending on game plan. They may zone him off, and 2 would be expected to be covered by Edmonds. But that could be different depending on the game plan, when you have a player as special as Mark Andrews. This last piece of this, hopefully it helps you understand that a called split field coverage is going to be different on each side of the field depending on how the routes distribute, what routes are being run by the receivers. And in my opinion, you've got 2 read on the bottom and you've got quarters on the top. There's some other people who will call that a little something different, but the terminology doesn't matter here. And that is some of the reason, I think, why sometimes we're waiting too long with the football, not just Lamar, but other quarterbacks in the NFL. It's also one of the reasons why sometimes you'll see a quarterback throw an out like this and a corner jumps it, like Joe Hayden did against the Ravens when RG3 got the start up there in Pittsburgh late in 2020 when Lamar was out, I think, with COVID. So there's more going on than just man free, cover 2, cover 3, what some people call cover 6, quarter, half. There's a lot going on, and I think that there are times when all of us, including myself, do not understand that there's a whole lot more being processed by that quarterback in 2.5 to 2.7 seconds than what we may perceive. We're not going to ever get the half field coverage calls. The NFL is never going to publish that stuff. Lamar, just for the purposes of this play breakdown, he's clearly looking over to that side. He may have processed that already. And that's one of my points about Lamar. That's really the ultimate point I'm trying to make, is there's plenty of times when Lamar is in danger, and any NFL quarterback is in danger of making a bad throw in terms of throwing an interception or throwing into the wrong coverage. But they recognize coverages based on alignments, based on situation, location on the field. This, to me, is one of them things where it's easy to say, well, for real, to be honest with you, I would like for him to throw that ball to Likely on the drag. I've said that multiple times. I think that route is one that we have not hit enough in this offense. I feel like it's a jab. Until we get Gus back, JK back 100%, I think he's close. Ronnie Stanley back. Hopefully he's back Sunday night. Until we get the full complement of our offense, Bateman as well, to me, those underneath drags, we have to hit them. We have to hit them. That route progression I just showed you, the out by Andrews, the vertical by Duvernay, the drag by Likely, and then the late dig or post by Robinson, depending on, what he reads with that safety. That safety Poyer that dropped down, like that robber technique, Robinson could have been reading him as well and turn it into a post or a dig, depending on what Poyer gets in terms of depth. You can tell I'm an MMA fan. I keep saying Poirier like Dustin Poirier. But in any case, that's one of the things, if you ask me, that can slow down a quarterback's process. And I think it's one of the things the Ravens DBs are trying to do at certain times. But with the injury to Fuller, Peters not being there early in the season, JAD being a rookie, now Peters probably not playing Sunday night. I think it's possible the Ravens are going to play a lot more vanilla, plain coverages, especially against this Bengals team, as talented as they are in 11 personnel. Let me know what you think of this quick and dirty introduction to split field coverages. I have referred to it many times, never really, I don't think, did a specific video on it. This, to me, really only covers like 5 or 8% of what it could cover. I would like to find some other plays that kind of illustrate 2 read better for you. 2 read, some people refer to as a trap coverage. Nobody refers to it as a trap coverage as a DB, or as a coach. It's called 2 read in the meeting rooms. Now, they may have their own word for it, that's quick. No one's going to say to read, to read. They'll have their own word for it. Okay? It's a quick one-syllable word to communicate between corner safety and the strong safety or the inside linebacker, to the away side of the field. Appreciate you guys' time. Let me know what you think of this little description or summary of split field coverages that I have referred to many times, but I've never done, my due diligence and kind of trying to explain it to you guys. I think Coach's video that I'm going to link to will be a little bit more comprehensive than mine, but even he admits in the video that there's way more information to go over, and it takes a lot of practice time to be able to do these things. Appreciate you guys checking the video out.